Hi everyone, and thank you for coming. This talk will be fast, no more than 25 minutes. Let's start the timer. In this talk we are going to speak about how to handle different clusters in RabbitMQ in Kubernetes with Traefik. About the context, just to have some context, we will speak about Kubernetes, services, pod, and service mesh. I assume that you know more or less this concept. If you have some question, I will be glad to answer during the coffee break. So this is the use case that we want to solve today. We have a private network that could be Kubernetes, or in this case, it's Kubernetes, but can be also some other kind of the private network. And we have two different clusters. One is called bugs cluster that actually is just one node. And the second one is bunny cluster, 3 nodes cluster. Though these two clusters totally different each other. The problem is, so we have to connect the clients, the external clients from the public network to the private network. So how to do that? Of course, as you can imagine, there are different ways to do that. Today, we are going to see two possible solutions. The first one is to expose the services directly from the Kubernetes service. And the second one is to access through a proxy with SNAI. And we will see both. And at the end, we will see a demo for the last for the second implementation. So which is best? Which is better? I don't know. I mean, what I can say that is this one is the right Italian dish, and the linguine alfredo is not. So I can't say which is the best solution for Kubernetes, but for sure I can say that linguine is actually an Italian dish and the linguine alfredo is not. So this is the only things that I'm sure today. So the first one, expose the services. Basically, you have in Kubernetes, you have your service, your deployment, your service, and you can expose directly the service to the public network. It depends from the Kubernetes installation. You can get, for example, a public IP, so the client can connect directly from the client to the internal service. At this point, you have one public IP for bugs and one public IP for maybe bunny. So in this way, it's easy to implement. Let's see in detail. When we use the first solution, it's extremely easy to do, especially if you use the RabbitMQ cluster operator. I really suggest to use it if you are using RabbitMQ in Kubernetes. But there are some cons about that. So it can be expensive because you need one public IP for each cluster. Maybe if you have more clusters, you need more public IPs. Maybe you need to reconfigure the DNS, or because you need to map your domain with the new IP and stuff like that. And also, this is my personal opinion, you should always put a proxy when you want to expose your private service to the public network. Put a proxy is another layer that you can have more security, more control in your system. So we mentioned Traefik. Before seeing how it works, what is Traefik? Traefik is basically a service mesh, is an open source router that routes the request on your system and finds the right component to handle the request, basically. You can have multiple rules. For example, you can redirect the traffic based on the domain name. You can redirect the traffic based on the paths, or this is mostly for HTTP, but you can use also TCP, also based on the domain, and you can use static routing or dynamic routing, or SNI. That is what we are going to see today. Whoops. So what is SNI? I want to be sure that everyone know what is SNI. SNI is an extension of the TLS, and which a client indicates which host name it is attempting to connect at the start of the handshake process. So basically, with SNI, you can have a TCP connection maybe in one domain, and you can specify another SNI name that is internal to the protocol. This is what is happening. This is a dump for Wireshark when you want to use SNI inside a test. This is a very useful feature to use, because speaking about TLS, you don't have a lot of tools to understand where to route the traffic differently from the HTTP, maybe. Okay, so let's see. This is another solution. The bugs clients will be connected to the ingress, that is the Traefik 2.0, that allows the TLS TCP ingress, starting only for 2.0. And the second one, the Bunny client, uses the SNI bunny.forsages.net, that is the domain that we are going to use. And then Traefik will redirect internally the traffic to bugs or to Bunny. That seems to be easy, right? Everything, of course, is in TLS. So let's see the pros and cons about the second approach. So we are going to add another layer. That is, of course, the proxy that you must handle, you must configure, you have to do stuff to maintain the proxy. And another problem that you can meet is that the proxy can be the bottleneck. So when you have another layer, maybe the new layer can be a bottleneck of your application. So when you decide to use an ingress or a proxy, you must be sure that this tool can scale with your system. Is extremely important. For example, Traefik can easily scale in Kubernetes. You can decide how many pods you want to run and can easily scale your application. The pro are that you can use just one public IP, and you can handle multiple clusters with SNI. So now in this example, we have just 2 clusters, but image that you have more clusters that you want to handle. And it's easy to create a relation between the public IP and the service that you want to route the traffic. So how does it work? I mean, this is the client configuration. This is Go, but more or less all the client work, all the TLS configurations work in the same way. When you specify the TLS config, you can specify the server name that is actually the SNI. This is the SNI. But the most important part is that we are going to use always the same domain to access to the system. I mean, you don't need to change the domain. You don't need to access to bugs.formessages.net. You can use always this domain, and then thanks to the Traefik binding, you can redirect the traffic from the public endpoint. This MQPS basically is this one. And thanks to the match from the host SNI, you can redirect the traffic to the internal RabbitMQ bugs, that is the internal service in Kubernetes. In this example, we use the TLS pass-through. Then we will speak also about that. So some demo that I like to show some code. Let me, sorry, give me a second. Okay, let's move this here. Okay, so here we have two clusters. This is bug, as I said, just one node running with RabbitMQ 3.8. And the second one is Bunny with 3 nodes and RabbitMQ 3.9. This is the new one with the stream enable, but we don't use it today. Internally in Kubernetes, this is what is happening. We have just one public IP. That this is the public IP, and internally we can see that we have Bunny with 3 nodes and bugs with 3 nodes and with internal cluster IP. So Bunny and bugs are not exposed in a public way. Now let's see some example here. This is just a client test. Let's start to connect to the first cluster, that is the bugs. As you can see here, there is a connection. We publish some message here, and the connection will be closed in 10 seconds. And here we go. We done. The important things again is that we use formessages.net, always the same P. What we change is just the SNI. The second one is Bunny. And again, we see the, oops, sorry, we were to the second one. Again, we have the connection, we have the queue, we publish some message, and everything works in the right way. You can trust me. But by the way, this cluster are public. If you want to access, the username and password are test if you just want to log in. Now, let's see what happens if we are going to use a wrong SNI, so an SNI that does not exist. So this is the result, because the IP is always the same, but I can't connect because there is no lookup, no match between wrong SNI to an internal RabbitMQ cluster. Now, I want to show you some things. We have this definition, and that we are going to call wrong SNI, and we want to redirect the traffic to RabbitMQ bugs. Okay, the first one using the wrong SNI. So the question is, what happens if I enable this route? I mean, if I execute this program now, it fails, but what happens if I apply this rule? Someone wants to answer? No? Okay, so let's apply this rule. So the rule is enabled. And let's see some things like ingress. TCP. So as you can see, we have the standard bugs ingress, then we have the ingress on the second ingress, and then we have the ban ingress. So everything is enabled. Now let's try again. Sorry, let's try again with the use case number 3. So as you can see, the connection is trying to connect to bugs for messages.net because the lookup basically worked, but what didn't work is that we created the certificate only valid for bugs for messages.net. This is extremely important because it prevents your cluster to access with wrong configurations. Maybe some things get wrong during the configuration, or maybe someone wants to access to your cluster using another host name, stuff like that. So in this way, you prevent access with wrong configurations and stuff like that. This is why I usually suggest to use a proxy or in front of your installation, and don't access directly to the endpoint. This is my personal opinion. So let's back to the presentation. I'd like to mention a couple of things. So in this example, we used TLS pass-through. So the endpoint is MQPS directly. So the clients, the TCP connection, the TLS connection, the traffic is passed as it from the client to the server, to the endpoint, basically. But what I'd like to say is that in kind of the configuration, in this kind of the environment, will be better to use something more complex. I know that we are adding layers and make the configuration more and more complex, but I think that in some case you should use this configuration. It would be better to use TLS termination and maybe TLS origination. What does it mean? It means that you have the TLS communication between your client and then the proxy, that in this case is Traefik, but can be something else. Then redirect the traffic to the endpoint. At this point, once you have this configuration, you can do several stuff. For example, you can have the RabbitMQ endpoint in MQP instead of MQPS. That it's easier to understand what's going on in your system. Maybe you want to enable some Wireshark, some logs, etc., and everything is in clear. But the traffic between the client and the proxy is in TLS. The second one, and this is another interesting one, is because there are smart proxy that can analyze the traffic with filters or other, let's say, rules that you can apply to the traffic in real time. And this is very interesting, and you can't do that with TLS traffic, because basically you can't parse the traffic, and you don't understand exactly you can't understand exactly what's going on. So if you want to know more about this configuration, you can go to the RabbitMQ channel in YouTube. There are several videos. One of them is this episode, where we explain with Gerard step by step how to reach this kind of the configuration. And you can see also the public source code. Everything that you see here is public. You can go in this repository and find the source code to to test your configuration. I think that the only things that is not public is this client. Maybe if someone is interested, I need to fix it because the code is very ugly. At some point, I will make some things better, and I will publish this test client that can be useful in general to test the endpoints with SNAI. So we have just a few minutes left. I finished it. So stop speaking about Traefik and Kubernetes and stuff like that. As an Italian, I'm mad about food. And when I go around outside Italy, I see usually strange dishes marketed as Italian dishes. So I want to point out a few things that are extremely, extremely important. The first one is that spaghetti alla bolognese as dish does not exist. It's not an Italian dish. I am from Bologna, and trust me, it does not exist. Linguine Alfredo does not exist. And I'd like to add that linguine is not an Italian word, and maybe linguine. And in Italy, we don't know Alfredo. Who is this Alfredo? We exactly don't know. And cappuccino only for breakfast. Please, if you come in Italy, don't take cappuccino after lunch, after dinner, only for breakfast, maybe max 11 o'clock. The last one, I don't want to add any comment on this because I think that it speaks for itself. And the last one is no comment on this one. So I finished it in, 23 minutes, and that's it. Hope you enjoyed the talk.
Well, thank you very much, Gabriele. One question, one important question. What's your favorite pizza?
That's great. So, well, I prefer the standard pizza because margherita, it's the standard one because I think that easy is less is more, and it's one of my favorite pizza. Yes.
My favorite is the Four Seasons. Is it a Quattro Stagioni? My Italian is, I know, poor, but he can't speak English properly either. So anyway, no, thank you very much for that very interesting talk. And I must remind everybody that you can rate the talks, and please do so to give some feedback to our presenters. All feedback is very welcome. We do have some questions. So Dennis, can you perhaps ask your question? Perhaps you want to unmute yourself and ask a question.
I only asked myself if this is also possible with this default Nginx ingress controller, because
the Nginx control could do the same, or am I wrong? So it should. I didn't try it yet. It's one of the proxy that I need to test, but basically it's enough that it supports the SNAI in TLS ingress and it works. There is nothing special in this configuration. So just check if it supports the SNAI in TLS, and everything should work without problem.
Yeah, thanks. So it supports. So I have had a look already. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Federico, you have a couple of questions. Perhaps you could start with your food-based question. Are you still there? Can you unmute yourself?
I can read the question, by the way. So
please do. Your Italian will be better than mine.
So have you tried other service mesh like Istio or Envoy? So we tried Envoy. We are working on Envoy. That is very cool. And we also working on Istio. I have a personal opinion about Istio, but I don't want to share my opinion with you. So I really like Envoy, even if the base of Istio is Envoy. Envoy itself is very cool. About Istio, I don't know. maybe 2 layers. I don't know. I need to test it more in some production environment to see more details. So that's it.
Okay, we have another question. Does the proxy impact performance?
Yeah, I mean, when we add a layer, of course, we can have a drop of the performance. We did some tests with Envoy, and we don't lose too much the performance. So when we expose public some service, maybe one of the problem is the network or latency or stuff like that. But there is a drop, but not so much. I mean, not too much.
Good. Adam Casey, you have a question. Are you there?
Hey, yes. I thought it was really interesting that you're talking about right now you do TLS pass-through, but you'd like to move to TLS termination. If you did this, would you miss the feature of being able for client certificates, or is there something here that I don't understand?
No, because the proxy can stand it without problems. You can have different certificates from the proxy layer, basically, and then another set of the certificates for the endpoint. So you don't lose the feature, basically.
Okay, I think that's all the questions we've had. Has anyone got any more questions? Please speak up now or forever hold your peace, as we say. I must remind you that we have the sponsors booths are available in around 10 minutes, and I encourage everyone to visit the sponsors booths, otherwise they feel lonely and unwanted and unloved. It gives you a chance to talk to some very interesting people. There is also a quiz that's taking place somewhere on the app. I recommend that you take part in that and try and win some Amazon vouchers, probably, because that's what they normally give away. But apart from that, I guess if we have no other questions, then we can retire early and get a cappuccino, but depending on, of course, where you are in the world and what your time zone is. Yeah, but we have some people still in Pacific time, and I think they can probably just still get away with it.
Yeah. If someone is in the Pacific time, can. In Italy, only Europe, you can't. It's illegal in Italy.
I will never dare do that in Italy again, but yeah. I've learned my lesson.
Okay.